a battlefield first, a strike behind Russian lines. But there is confusion this hour about who's responsible and what happens next. The moment of impact looked here, caught on video. You can see it, low-flying helicopters firing at a Belgorod fuel depot, and a bright orange burst signaling a direct hit. The aftermath? 3.5 million gallons of fuel on fire. Russian state media says this strike set 8 tanks ablaze and that the fire might still spread. Video posted on social media captures another view of the strike. Russia says those are Ukrainian helicopters, but Ukraine's Ministry of Defense would not take credit or even comment on the attack. Let's get first to Lviv and CNN's Phil Black. Phil, what's the latest?
So, John, the latest is that Ukraine and its military have been and continue to be deliberately vague about who was responsible for this strike, which you've just been discussing. In their words, they have said we can neither confirm nor deny. Now, that is very different to what Russian officials have said. They say that Ukrainian helicopters crossed the border, flew low, approached the city of Belgorod and attacked that fuel depot. We see the video, we see the fire, we see the strike. So the question is, who did this? The implication that Ukraine did it would seem to be that they have sophisticated capability and they have launched this bold strike in order to go after a seemingly high-value target on Russian territory. It's something that's bigger in many ways than anything we've seen over the course of this war so far. But given their vague and unclear response, it points to only a couple of possibilities here. One is that, yes, Ukraine did do this, but is choosing to be publicly ambiguous, perhaps for operational reasons or some other cause, or this is the result of Russian action, and yet either deliberate or accidental, and yet they are choosing publicly so far to state that Ukraine was responsible for this attack on their own territory, John.
Phil Black for us, live on the ground in Lviv. Phil, thanks very much for the latest, and let's get some more context now. Important insights from retired Air Force Colonel, CNN military analyst Cedric Leighton. Colonel, great to have you with us. Obviously, here's the area. We talked about Belgorod in the early days of the war because our Fred Pleitgen was there, and we were watching it, a staging ground for Russian forces coming in. Now we have this, and this is a freeze frame of this helicopter. From your experience, what is that?
This is an Mi-24 helicopter, and it's one of the helicopters that the Russians and other countries have used for attacks. It is used has been used in all kinds of conflicts, like the Chechen wars, as well as, of course, Georgia and in their South Ossetia campaign. Plus, of course, here.
You mentioned Russians using them, but does Ukraine have those helicopters?
They do. They do have these helicopters, yes.
And so Ukraine's defense ministry says no comment. The Russians say that's a Ukrainian helicopter. Can't tell from that picture.
No, you can't. No markings that you can discern from this, and it's also possible that the markings were blacked out in order to hide exactly who was flying this aircraft.
And so I just want to come and show our viewers back to this. Phil Black, we use some of this with Phil Black. When you see something like that, though, this would be, if you are the Ukrainians, this would be a high-value target because we've talked repeatedly for weeks about logistics, keeping your forces fueled up and fed. There's the fuel.
Absolutely, and this is a direct hit on a fuel storage facility. It's very clear from the type of fire that you see right here, John, that it's petroleum products that are burning, and what we call POL, petroleum oil lubricants. This is what you need in order to fly aircraft of multiple types, and hitting this is a perfect military target.
So let's come back out to the bigger map as we look at it here, in the sense that this is just across the border. Literally, you're talking just several miles across the border. If, and we don't know, the ministry, again, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense saying no comment. If this is Ukraine, for the first time, hitting a target on Russia's side of the border, would you view that as a change in strategy or just a target of opportunity, a moment of opportunity?
In this case, I would say it's a moment of opportunity. However, it could be a harbinger of a change in strategy where they're actually trying to bring the war, the Ukrainians are trying to bring the war home to the Russians, at least in part. Now, it's only 18 miles from the border to Belgorod. That is an easy target from a military standpoint and a distance standpoint. If they go further deep into Russia, that would be a marked change in the way they're conducting the war. From the Ukrainian standpoint.
Another thing we heard today from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense is that it believes Russia is moving missiles over here to Belarus. So what would be the strategic meaning, significance of that?
So what they would be doing if they moved, let's say, missiles, Kyiv being right here, and that would be this area right here. You could still move missiles into places like here, and still hit Kyiv without any problem. The missiles that the Russians use have that range, most of them do, and they could easily hit targets like Kyiv, Irpin, any of the others that are really important for that particular objective of the Russian war aims, which I believe has not changed, by the way.
And from a Ukrainian defense standpoint, this would be a bold new development, sending your helicopters across the border if that is the case. What do you do? We know troops came in from Belarus. We know that Russian planes have flown from here. The Pentagon says they usually come right around the border and then go back. They're not coming too deep into Ukraine. If there is a significant buildup of missiles here, is there much Ukraine can do from its side of the border about that?
They would have to mount attacks like they did on Belgorod if they did that. In order to get those kinds of missiles and get their launch sites, it would be very important for them to do that. They would have to go to the source, to the launching site, and be able to eliminate that. Of course, that then risks spreading the war out, and then Belarus could use that as an excuse to enter the war on Russia's side.
Let me bring you lastly over here. The Pentagon also says it expects increase. There's already been significant military activity over here, but in the Donbass region, obviously, sometimes the map itself, the Russian troops in these red areas explains it, but why? Why at this moment would you be looking for Russia to increase military activity in the Donbass?
This is Russia moving, this is a tactical move, not a strategic move on their part. Their strategic war aims remain the same, but the Russians are seeing this as a target of opportunity in a sense, because as one of their war aims, they wanted to expand this area right here, where you have the separatist-controlled area. They want to expand that even further into an area about like this. And that then gets them a bigger portion of Ukraine that they can outright control. And that, of course, is the goal. They could also link that up, of course, with the Russian-occupied areas down here.
Colonel Layton, grateful for your insights. And as you draw that map down the coast, you see Odessa over here, still under Ukrainian control, the fighting in here. Let's go to Odessa now. It's right along the southern Ukrainian coast. That city in the middle right now of preparing for an expected renewed Russian assault. CNN's Ed Lavandera is right there. Ed, what's the latest?
Well, John, here in southern Ukraine, in Odessa, this is a key port city on the Black Sea, and many people here watching anxiously what you're just now talking about, exactly how those forces, mostly in the north, will be repositioning in the east. There are already Russian forces that have made their way about halfway between Odessa, where I am, and Mariupol, and those Russian forces have essentially stalled out in the last week, and it's been relatively quiet here. But given the movement that we're seeing from Russian forces in the north, many people here are trying to figure out exactly what is Russia up to? What are they going to do next? And does that mean, because early on in this war, in this invasion, there was a lot of talk that Odessa would be a key prize for the Russian forces, that would essentially make Ukraine a landlocked country. So there's been a great deal of focus, fortification all around the city, even as the city kind of goes about its daily business. So because of what is happening in those troop movements that we're seeing and the strategy shift apparently by Russia, many people here are, John, anxiously watching what that will mean and what the timeline of all of this will be in the days, if not weeks ahead. John?
Ed Lavandera live for us on the streets of Odessa. Ed, thanks so much for that important report.